de una manera diferente para generar un impacto distinto en el planeta. Nuestro siguiente invitado es director y fundador de High-Tech SA y es científico visitante en la École Polytechnique Federal de Lausanne, en Suiza. Su foco central son justamente el desarrollo de combustibles sustentables. Sabemos que el problema que tenemos hoy día con el cambio climático y principalmente con el calentamiento global dice relación en gran parte con el tipo de combustibles que estamos utilizando. Él trabaja con el mundo del hidrógeno y con su almacenamiento, pero a larga escala. Es pionero en la tecnología de la fotosíntesis artificial utilizando luz solar. Queremos dar la bienvenida a Saurabh Temburne.
And work towards a sustainable and better future. My name is Saurabh, and as you may already have figured out, I'm a scientist and entrepreneur based out of the beautiful country of Switzerland. So before I dive into the topic of solar hydrogen, let me first start with a very simple but quite important question. Wouldn't it be great if you could reduce our dependency on conventional fossil fuels, which are anyway exhausting and are the major cause of damages not only to our environment, but are also at the center of major geopolitical tensions? And wouldn't it be equally amazing if you could produce a clean alternative fuel simply by using locally available and sustainable input resources such as sunlight and water? The simple answer is, it's a no-brainer. Yes, this would be amazing, and this is exactly what my work focuses on, and this is exactly what we do at High-Tech, which is a company I found based in Switzerland to really commercialize and take this technology forward. So let me dive a bit more into hydrogen and why hydrogen technically. So hydrogen, in fact, is widely recognized as the clean alternative fuel for the future. And it's all for good reasons. And why so? Hydrogen is, in fact, the simplest element out there. And because of this, it's, in fact, the most abundant element in the entire universe. But there's a catch. Hydrogen doesn't exist in its free form. The hydrogen gas in the free form you cannot find in our atmosphere because it's the lightest gas, so it doesn't even stay in our atmosphere. Where you can find hydrogen is, in fact, everyone around us. In fact, our body has a significant composition out of hydrogen. All the hydrocarbon things which you see around here has hydrogen on top of carbon. So hydrogen is, in fact, everywhere, and the use of hydrogen is the cleanest way to use a fuel. Because when you burn hydrogen, the only thing you produce is, in fact, water. There are no other emissions. So it's kind of a magic fuel. So what's the catch again here? Why we are not strongly focusing on this fuel? And what has taken so long basically to focus on this clean fuel? The problem is that most of this hydrogen today is, in fact, produced from fossil fuels, which kind of kills the purpose to have a clean fuel which is based on non-clean fuel. It's an irony. And the second biggest problem is most of this production is, in fact, centralized. So if you as a user want to use this beautiful fuel, it has to get transported over hundreds to thousands of kilometers to you. And in the transportation, it again will induce pollution, it would take time, and eventually it would be costly. And the second irony is they use diesel trucks to transport hydrogen cylinders, which is, again, kind of kills the purpose. So what's the solution here? When you look around outside in nature, you can always find solutions to each and every problem. And that's what we did. My inspiration here was this beautiful real tree. And the process which inspired me is, in fact, millennia old. It's photosynthesis. To simply describe, this real tree absorbs the sunlight, uses water and carbon dioxide to basically give you your food or energy and oxygen which we breathe, right? That's the basic principle of photosynthesis. So that's what we exactly did. We mimicked this process in an artificial way and made it highly efficient to really make it cost effective. So on the right side, you see an artificial tree. That's our creation. We call it ARB. And in fact, in terms of photosynthesis efficiency, if you compare to that real tree, it's 25 times more efficient. But the working principle is still the same. You use sun and water as the only input resource for that. No other dependency. You don't need anything else. And in the end, you get clean and pure fuel, that is hydrogen. That also gives you oxygen. In fact, highly pure oxygen, which you can use for all the purposes. On top of this, it also gives you heat energy as an output. So it's a cogeneration system for fuel and power. So now, let's dive slightly deeper into what makes this innovation or the technology interesting. In its whole essence, the ARB looks something like this. So on the right side, you see the real picture of a product scale pilot. So what you see, in fact, is a big reflector. That's nothing special. The light falls on it, it concentrates light by a factor of 1,000, but this has been existing since ages. So what's innovative here is the small device, which in fact is just this small, which sits in the center focal spot of that particular collector. And that's what is performing artificial photosynthesis. If I go in more technical terms, this is the more detailed schematic, but I won't bore you with what exactly happens here. But essentially what we are doing here is we are combining multiple physics as well as chemistry in one single device, which allows us to be very efficient as well as cost effective. And in simple terms, this is how it works. Apparently there's a video which is not playing, but anyway. So basically the concentrated light falls on that artificial photosynthesis device. We simply put water into the device, and using the sunlight, the water is broken into hydrogen and oxygen already separated. And the basic principle behind this is basically photoelectrochemistry. So that was the core innovation from us. And what is the output of this innovation? Essentially, this allowed us to achieve some of the highest solar to fuel efficiencies out there. So some of the efficiency figures you would notice are mentioned over here. Just to put it into perspective, maybe absolute number doesn't make sense to you. As I said, this is 25 times higher than what a real tree does. And this is at least 2 times better than anything else you would find out there in the scientific world or in the industrial world, right? So, and that's not it. It's not only about solar fuel or solar hydrogen. As you may notice, a tree does in fact multiple other stuff also, right? It doesn't just give you glucose and oxygen. It can do even other stuff. So even our tree is versatile. It's a cogeneration system. Normally in any energy system, even in solar panels, which you guys are very familiar with, you always produce heat, which normally is wasted back into the atmosphere. You cannot collect because it's not economically feasible to collect over a large area. Here, we also collect that heat. We use that heat, in fact, to optimize that conversion efficiency, but also give this as an output to you, basically to the user. You can use this heat actually for heating purpose. You can convert this heat also into cold. So if you talk about the overall energetic efficiency of the entire system, it's unparalleled, it's 80%. What it means, out of the 100% of the light which is falling on this collector, 80% is given as an output to you in the useful energy form, right? That's what makes it super interesting. So our mission at So High Tech essentially is to deploy clean and green and on-site way of producing fuel and power. This is a system which we can deploy right next to where you need the fuel and power. If you want to power your houses, commercial building, we can create artificial gardens with this tree, which will provide you electricity, heat, as well as energy storage. If you want to power big industries, we can create a farm or forest with these trees, very close to the industry, and we can support them in terms of their fuel needs, raw material needs, or energy needs. Just to put it into perspective, there are another aspect of a real tree, which we also mimic. A real tree actually captures CO2, and basically, if you want to save certain amounts of CO2, you can plant multiple of these trees, right? In a similar way, we do not capture the CO2, but by producing energy in completely clean way, by producing this fuel in completely clean way, producing heat and oxygen in completely clean way, you save up to 80 tons of CO2 on an yearly basis with one single tree. If I translate this into equivalency of what a real tree does, this is equivalent of planting 3,000 trees. So next time if you want to save emissions, you can very well consider investing and planting these artificial trees. To give you a holistic flavor of the impact, not only our trees, but hydrogen as a whole can have on the global scenario. So here on the left side, what is shown over here is the emissions which you generate today by producing hydrogen from fossil fuels. By the way, hydrogen is called the fuel of the future, though it's age-old. Hydrogen has been existing in the oil and gas industry, in the fertilizer industry, in the chemical industry since ages. It's a raw material, it's a fuel. It's already a $130 billion industry. You don't need to find new uses of hydrogen. But it's all produced in a gray, so basically from fossil fuels. And currently they produce almost 1 billion tons of CO2 simply by this way of producing hydrogen. If we deploy our solution or green hydrogen solutions, even simply with 10% penetration, which we can very well achieve in the coming year, you are talking about 100 million tons of CO2 saving, which is huge. But it doesn't stop here. Hydrogen is a fuel which can eventually replace your diesel, your petrol, or any other kind of fossil fuel. You can power your cars with it. You may have heard about hydrogen cars. Yes, they are new. They are up and coming. You can power your houses with it. You can do energy storage with hydrogen, which batteries cannot do on a long-term and large amount of basis. You can power your industries, your agriculture farms. Basically, it can literally replace fossil fuels in variety of sectors. So if I just take into account the overall emissions the fossil fuels generate today across overall industrial sectors, it's 50 billion tons on a yearly basis. And if you could replace even 20% of these uses with hydrogen and make it in a clean way, definitely not with fossil fuels, you can make a very significant impact. So that's what we can do with hydrogen if you do it in a clean way. Sure, our ARP technology, what we developed, comes out of Switzerland. All this couldn't be possible without the support which we have for innovation, in fact, in Switzerland. And at So High Tech, our mission is to empower nature. We want to, in fact, take inspiration from nature and empower nature by creating today the solution of tomorrow. Going further into, let's say, the various application sectors where you can deploy hydrogen. As I just explained, you can literally use hydrogen in a variety of sectors. And in fact, hydrogen is considered to be the Swiss Army knife of energy solutions. Because you can use hydrogen for the left category sector, you can use it as a fuel, as a raw material in fertilizer industry, steel making, steel processing, semiconductor manufacturing, glass manufacturing. And on the right side, this is up and coming and new uses of hydrogen, which is for energy storage. This has not been realized earlier, but this is something new where hydrogen can make one of the biggest impact. And to give you a flavor of that, so here on the left plot, we are comparing all the fuels which you can find technically, and we are comparing them on one important matrix, which is energy density, right? So hydrogen you see on the right axis on the extreme right side. What it means with 1 kilogram of hydrogen, there is no other fuel on the planet which has that high energy. On the right side, what we are comparing is various energy storage solutions. One of them you may be very familiar, which is batteries, which you have in your phones, in your cars. But if you want to do energy storage for days, weeks, or seasons, probably you already know you cannot do it with batteries. And if you want to store large amount of power, this you also cannot do. There, a fuel-based solution, such as in terms of hydrogen, is the only way. And this you may also very well realize in Chile, where technically you have a lot of nice solar resource, but the grid doesn't exist everywhere. So you cannot simply inject power when you produce from these valuable renewables into the grid. You need storage. You cannot do this in terms of battery at this large scale. You can do this with hydrogen. You can do it for long term without any leakage happening. So that's the role hydrogen can play in terms of the energy vector. And how our ARB solution basically allows us to realize this. So ARB, as I said, it's not only a hydrogen production solution, it's a cogeneration system for fuel and power. These are the 4 outputs on the right side which you see, which we can produce: pure oxygen, pure hydrogen, and pure also heat, basically. On top of this, it's a versatile system. If you want electricity even directly from the sun from ARB, it can also do this. So for example, if you want to power your commercial residential building, where you need technically electricity, you don't need hydrogen. Hydrogen is just an energy storage medium in that use case. You can very well do this in a dynamic way. And that too, we do it with twice the efficiency than anything else you would find out there. With twice the efficiency of the solar panel probably which exists somewhere on the top of this roof. Apart from this, there's a flexibility aspect of our system. Now you could tell me, okay, it's a solar-based solution, right? It doesn't operate for 24 hours. No, ARB does operate for 24 hours. ARB is a hybrid input system. It works in complete synergy with sunlight as well as any external source of energy which you can feed to it. You can power it with other energy which comes from wind energy, hydroelectric dam, because sunlight is always changing. You would never have 100% capacity with sunlight. Chile is one of the best places to have constant output, but elsewhere the clouds always change the capacity. You can always compensate this in a dynamic way with other sources of energy. So it's a very versatile and flexible system which can not only offer, let's say, the benefits for the user, but essentially you may already know with the variable renewables, grid stability is a big problem. And with this approach, you can help to stabilize and optimize grid. So that was about one tree, but this is not going to solve problem. How we deploy the solution is in fact by creating gardens and forests of multiple of these trees. So here you see a schematic example, basically how could these trees look like. And when I say a garden or forest, believe me, it's exactly like a garden and forest. You can be around those trees, it's safe. Don't worry, hydrogen, when you produce at these trees, it's not explosive. You can be safe, you can do it on an agricultural farm, you can have animals around it. So that's the whole concept. When we say really tree, we are really mimicking it, not only in terms of photosynthesis, but functionality and practical aspects. And we don't have only one size. One size cannot fit all, this everyone knows. We want to cater to the needs of small, medium, large-scale sectors. So in fact, we have 3 sizes. We can go all the way to few megawatts, multi-megawatt, even gigawatt scale with the various sizes which we have. So just to complement, we in fact develop, build and operate these gardens and forests. And our aim is to offer hydrogen or fuel as a service. Eventually, what you care about is how much you pay for your clean fuel. And that's what we want to provide you. A complete solution in terms of service. Very briefly to end my presentation, I would like to compare our solution with all the other ways which exist for hydrogen production, right? So on the right, these are the non-clean ways. You use fossil fuels to create hydrogen. In the middle, you have still clean ways. You can use solar farms and still use that clean electricity to do something called electrolysis and produce hydrogen. But if you compare all the approaches on the 2 important parameters, which is the production price, eventually, if you buy a clean fuel, even if you are a sustainability lover, next day you would ask me, Saurabh, I pay for diesel $2 per kilogram, how much I would pay for hydrogen if I were to run for 100 kilometers. So it has to be cost competitive. If you have to replace fossil fuel, sustainability alone is not going to drive it. And that's what we can achieve. If you see the plot, we are not only the most sustainable solution out there, but we are also the most cost-effective one. We have a production price which can directly replace fossil fuels. So that's almost the end. This is just to say, ARB, in fact, as I said, is a versatile and flexible system. It's better than anything else. Another point I wanted to highlight, on anywhere on the planet, if you have a parcel of land and if you want to deploy a PV farm to produce hydrogen, you deploy these ARBs and we would give you 2 to 3 times more production in the same land. So the land co-utilization also becomes super interesting, thanks to the high efficiency and the durability which we offer. So with this, I would not spend much time on this, but just to say, we in fact do hold a world record on the best performing solar hydrogen production system. And currently we are commercializing with industrial sector our solution. We are already creating gardens in Switzerland and already targeting to create forest in US and also creating our footprint slowly here in Chile. So with this, I would conclude with a final message. I started my presentation with a question. I would like to end it with a message. Change doesn't happen on its own. We, the people, have to drive the change. And solving climate crisis is not the job of one country, it's not the job of one industry, it's not the job of one community. We all have to collaborate together and work together to solve this crisis. So let's work together and let's make the planet Earth great again. Thank you.
Agradecemos esa interesante exposición en este Congreso Futuro que ya vive su último tramo.